There was a boy called Jimmy in Benin City, Nigeria, who has a high desire to make money by all means. When he was a boy 10 years, as at that time he had some group of friends who he hung around with. When he became 12 years old, he decided not to school anymore. He became a street boy. He started taking hard drugs and he was so addicted to it. He also became a womanizer at the age of 14 years. A lot of girls started flaunting around him. His extravagant lifestyle was influenced by the young people in the society. His parents tried all means to stop him from all the things he is doing, but they couldn't. He also involved himself in cultists. He changed his name to Blood, where he, the leader of the cultists, noticed that Blood is a fearless boy. One day he sat alone and thought about how he can make money before he will be 19 years. He saw that the people in the society were struggling to make ends meet. He decided to do internet fraud. He didn't get anything within a year. He stopped and thought of what to do. He talked to a man who is going to work and asked for help in such a way that he asked the man, that is there any native doctor around here? Because I'm having spiritual problems with my life, I want a solution. The man showed him the place. He went straight to the herbalist man. When he got there, the herbalist called his name Jimmy 3 times. What do you want? He said, family, I want to make enough money before I will be 18 years old. The herbalist man laughed. Jimmy, you are in the right place. There are 3 options for you to make the money you want. 1. You need a manhood of the virgin. 2. You need a woman breast of a virgin. 3. You need sleep with 7 mad women in 3 days. Jimmy thought about it for a few minutes. As a young boy, where can he get a virgin woman? He also thought about how can he sleep with 7 mad women in 3 days. Then he decided to use his own manhood for the ritual. The following day he went back to the herbalist and used his own manhood for the ritual. The herbalist gave him a charm to use it and touch his manhood. Immediately he did it, the manhood disappeared, remaining a dot there. Then the herbalist gave him a calabash wrapped with red and black cloth and told him that this calabash must not touch the ground. He said okay. When he got home he put it in his wardrobe. Before the following morning the whole wardrobe was filled with money. He was happy. The same week he went to a car company in Benin City, Nigeria. He bought 3 brand new Toyota Venza. Immediately he transferred the money to the company. The manager called his account officer to confirm the money. The ACCT officer approved it. The manager of the car company secretly called the police to investigate Jimmy. When the police arrived, they questioned him thoroughly. In response, Jimmy confidently told them that he had used himself for a money ritual. To prove it, he even showed them his private part, which had been affected by the ritual. The officers, taken aback by his confession, demanded a settlement of 5 million naira to let him go. After some negotiation, Jimmy managed to settle them with a sum of 1 million naira. Having no other choice, the police accepted the money and set him free. Once released, Jimmy went straight to the car company and confronted the manager. He was furious. Why would you do such a thing? Just because I came to patronize your business, he demanded angrily. Without waiting for a response, Jimmy stormed out and left with his 3 brand new Toyota Venzas. That night, he and his friends headed straight to the club to celebrate his latest acquisition. The club was lively, filled with loud music, flashing lights, and the scent of expensive liquor in the air. They partied hard, throwing money around, and making sure everyone knew that Jimmy had arrived in style. However, when Jimmy got home, he couldn't shake off the betrayal he felt from the car manager. He decided that the man needed to be taught a lesson. The next day, he devised a plan. He hired 2 men and instructed them to go to the dealership, pretending to be wealthy customers interested in purchasing a Mercedes-Benz worth millions of naira. The 2 men arrived at the dealership, acting like serious buyers. They inspected the car, asked detailed questions about its features, and even negotiated the price. The manager, eager to make a sale, treated them with utmost hospitality. Eventually, they told him they wanted to take the car for a test drive to ensure the engine was in perfect condition. Without hesitation, the manager handed them the keys. As soon as both men got into the car, they started the engine and smoothly drove out of the dealership. Minutes turned into hours, but the car never returned. The manager began to feel uneasy. At first, he reassured himself that they were just taking their time with the test drive. But as more time passed, his heart started racing. He picked up his phone and tried calling the number they had given him, only to find that it was switched off. Panic set in. It was only then that he realized what had happened. The car was gone, stolen right under his nose. The two men had vanished with it, and by now, they had likely taken it to another state. The manager stood frozen, his mind racing. How could he have been so careless? He knew the risks of letting customers test drive expensive cars without proper verification, but these men had played their roles so well. Without wasting time, he grabbed his phone and called the police. "Officer, I have an emergency. A Mercedes-Benz has been stolen from my dealership," he reported frantically. The officer on the line asked for details. The manager provided everything he could: the description of the men, the car's registration number, and the direction they had driven off in. But deep down, he knew the chances of recovering the car were slim. Meanwhile, Jimmy was at home, laughing as he received a call from the two men. "Boss, the job is done. The car is already on its way to another state," one of them reported. Jimmy smirked. "Good. That's what that manager gets for messing with me. Take it to the buyer, and make sure we get the full payment before handing over the car." The plan had gone perfectly. Jimmy had connections in different states, and selling a stolen car was nothing new to him. Within hours, the Mercedes-Benz was handed over to a buyer who paid in cash. Jimmy got his share of the money and celebrated with his friends again, feeling untouchable. But what Jimmy didn't know was that the manager wasn't going to let this slide easily. The police had already begun their investigation, and the manager, desperate to get revenge, reached out to some of his own connections, people who had ways of finding stolen cars and dealing with criminals in their own ruthless manner. A few days later, Jimmy received an unexpected call from an unknown number. He answered, thinking it was another business deal. But instead, a deep, threatening voice spoke. "Jimmy, we know what you did. You think you can steal from us and walk free. You've made a big mistake." Jimmy's heart skipped a beat. "Who is this?" he demanded, trying to sound unfazed. The voice chuckled darkly. "You'll find out soon enough. Enjoy your last days of freedom." The call ended abruptly, leaving Jimmy gripping his phone tightly. For the first time in a long while, he felt a chill run down his spine. Something was coming for him. And this time, it wasn't the police, it was something far worse. Days turned into weeks, and Jimmy's life began to spiral out of control. At first, he brushed off the threatening phone call, thinking it was just an empty warning. But soon, strange things started happening, things he couldn't explain. Every night, as soon as he lay down to sleep, he would hear whispers in his room. Low, eerie voices murmuring in a language he didn't understand. At first, he thought it was his imagination, but then he started feeling a heavy presence in his room. It was as if someone, or something, was watching him. One night, he woke up drenched in sweat, his body frozen in place. He tried to move, but it felt like an invisible force was pressing him down. Suddenly, a cold voice whispered in his ear, "You will never know peace." Jimmy screamed and jumped out of bed, his heart pounding. He switched on the lights, but the room was empty. Shaken, he grabbed a bottle of alcohol, hoping to drown out whatever was haunting him. But no matter how much he drank, the fear wouldn't leave him. During the day, things weren't any better. His business deals started falling apart. Clients who once respected him suddenly avoided him. Some even claimed they had bad dreams about him and wanted nothing to do with his money. But the worst part came when he and his wife tried to have a child. They had been married for 2 years, and Jimmy had always assumed that when the time was right, they would have children. But after months of trying, his wife still wasn't pregnant. Frustrated, they went to the hospital for tests. When the results came back, the doctor's face was serious. "Mr. Jimmy," the doctor said, "medically speaking, there's no reason your wife shouldn't be able to conceive. But there is a problem." Jimmy leaned forward, his heart pounding. "What problem?" The doctor hesitated. "Sir, the issue is with you. You have a condition that makes it impossible for you to have children." Jimmy's world shattered. "That's a lie," he shouted. "Check again." The doctor sighed. "We ran the test multiple times. I'm sorry. Jimmy stormed out of the hospital, his mind racing. How was this possible? He had always been strong, healthy, and full of life. But now, he was being told he could never have a child. Then it hit him. The ritual. He had used himself for money rituals, and now he was paying the price. Desperate, he went from one herbalist to another, searching for a solution. But everywhere he went, he heard the same thing: the sacrifice has been made. The price has been paid. There is no going back. Jimmy's once glorious life was now a living nightmare. He had money, but no happiness. He had power, but no peace. And every time he closed his eyes, he saw shadows lurking in the darkness, waiting for him. The fear, the loneliness, the emptiness, it was only the beginning of his suffering. Jimmy's life had become a waking nightmare. His money could buy him anything except peace. Every night, he wrestled with unseen forces, tormented by the shadows that whispered his doom. His once lavish lifestyle had turned into a prison, trapping him in paranoia and fear. His friends, the same ones who once celebrated with him at the club, started avoiding him. Some claimed they saw strange figures following him. Others confessed to having nightmares about him, dreams of him screaming in agony, surrounded by darkness. But the final blow came when his wife, unable to bear the weight of his suffering, packed her bags and left. "I can't stay here anymore, Jimmy. There's something wrong with you. You're not the man I married," she said with tears in her eyes. Jimmy, broken and alone, sat in his empty mansion, surrounded by luxury, yet drowning in misery. The silence of the house was deafening. The cars in his garage, once a source of pride, now felt meaningless. Then, the nightmares became worse. One night, he dreamt he was in a dark forest, naked and shivering. A deep voice echoed from the trees. "You took what was not yours. Now, it's time to pay." He tried to run, but the ground beneath him turned into quicksand, pulling him down. He screamed, struggling to escape, but the darkness swallowed him whole. Jimmy woke up gasping for air. But something was wrong. His body felt weak, like he had been drained of all his energy. He looked at his hands and saw them trembling uncontrollably. His skin, once smooth and youthful, looked pale and lifeless. Panic gripped him. He rushed to the bathroom, turning on the light. When he looked into the mirror, he let out a blood-curdling scream. His reflection wasn't his. The face staring back at him was aged, wrinkled, and hollow, like that of a man who had suffered for decades. His eyes, once bright and full of arrogance, were now sunken and dark. It was as if time had caught up with him all at once. "No. No. No," he shouted, punching the mirror. The glass shattered, but the reflection remained, grinning at him. Jimmy fell to the floor, gasping for breath. His body felt as if it was decaying from the inside. He grabbed his phone with shaky hands and dialed the number of the herbalist he had visited days ago. "Please, help me," he begged. But the old man's voice was cold. "I warned you, Jimmy. You wanted wealth before 19, and you got it. But wealth given by dark forces always demands a price. And now, your time is up." The call ended. Jimmy dropped the phone, his vision blurring. A cold chill spread through his body as the shadows in the room thickened, creeping toward him. He tried to scream, but no sound came out. His body convulsed violently as if unseen hands were squeezing the life out of him. The walls of his mansion shook. The lights flickered. And then, silence. The next morning, Jimmy's lifeless body was found in his bedroom, his face frozen in an expression of sheer terror. His wealth, the cars, the houses, the bank accounts, everything he once owned, vanished like smoke. His properties were seized by the government, his friends looted what they could, and the rest was lost to time. Nobody mourned him. The same people who once envied him whispered his name in fear. Jimmy thought he had it all, they said, shaking their heads. But in the end, he lost everything, even his soul. Subscribe to this channel, my amazing friends. And so, the boy who had everything before 19 died with nothing, his story becoming a cautionary tale of greed, power, and the deadly cost of wealth gained through dark means.